Hey, welcome back everybody to Iconic Rod and Custom and episode 8 of Mighty Mouse. Now we took a couple weeks off of filming, and I know some of you have been asking me when the next episode is coming out. And we got the engine and transmission. I put some posts on there showing pictures of it, but we only actually got one engine mount, so I had to reorder get one so we can actually mount the engine in there. But we made tube mounts. As you can see, we got the front tubes, down tubes coming out. We took the lid off, took the front roof off here so we can completely weld the roll cage, and I got it stuck back on there, and I have the Clecos in here for the one brace. But Scott has been working on this left front hinge pillar. It was all crushed in. It was damaged pretty bad, so he's been working on that, getting that fixed up so we can rehang the doors. And we have to get all 4 doors hung up back on the vehicle so we can put the rear panel on and fit the rear section of the roof panel on, so we can get that all taken care of. But in the meantime, I'm working on welding up the rear panel here where we had to widen it. We just have all that tack welded in there. So I'm trying to finish it all back up, and so we can continue on with this. Now we're going to try to do probably a tilt front on this thing, and it's going to take a little bit, but I think we may be able to do it. I think we decided we're going to leave the front doors as is, as far as the hinge pillars, and just make the rear doors the suicide doors. Reason being, that center pillar is only 2 inches thick. We're going to have to make a massive widening for those suicide doors hinges to work for the front door. So I think we're just going to leave the front doors as is for now anyway, and just do the back doors as I said. So yeah, let's get to it. Now here again is a shot of all the tubing work that we did, and as you can see how close it is to the panels themselves. So we want to keep this tight so we can hide everything. Once we were happy the way all the tubing was fitting, we took the front section of the roof back off, prepped the tubing. We finished welding it completely around 360 degrees, and now we're adding some etch primer to it so the tubing doesn't rust. Actually, the primer in these rattle cans that we use are actually a very good product. I have things that I've painted almost 10 years ago, and they're still holding up really well, even with outside exposure. Obviously, this roll cage won't see the light of day once it's all covered, because everything is interior based, so it should last a long time. As you can see, there's different colors, and we have a multitude of them we keep on hand, but you know, it's just primer, so it doesn't have to be spiffy. As I said, this is all getting covered up, so it is what it is. Now it's time to cut more of the firewall, or as some call it, the bulkhead, to make room for the forward tubes, the front tubes, as well as the new firewall that we're going to fabricate to put in there. Oops, it looks like we forgot to cover the engine up. That's okay, it's going to get painted, but, you know, better safe than sorry, so we'll have to take care of that. You know, a good plasma cutter is priceless. You know, it speeds the things up when you're cutting out
Even whether it's a rough cut or even a finish cut, you can get some really nice cuts out of them, and just a little bit of grinding for the slag that's left on there, and boom, you're done, ready for the next process. Well, if you look, you'll see an intake on this. This LS7 came with a carbureted system, and frankly, it's the only LS7 that Blueprint even had. I guess GM has discontinued them. They're not going to be making them anymore. And we were lucky to find this one as it is, I guess. So we'll take what we can get, and sometime down the road the client can change it over or whatever he wants to do then. But he's happy, he's fine with this for now, so we'll go with it. And in case you're wondering, the dyno sheet that came with this particular engine is 628.8 horsepower. So it's no slouch as is, and it's going to be plenty to move this Morris Meyer around. The front tubes that we're fabricating up right now, we're going to actually bolt them to the front corners of the frame. That way, if we need to lift the body off or anything, we can just take the bolts out of that, and away we go with the body. We're out of frame here at the moment. Scott is cleaning up the first tube for the front, and I'm getting the roof ready actually to set on, so we can get it welded back on there after the tubing was all, or roll cage was all done and primered. Yeah, we'll make a little room here so we can put the roof back on, at least the front section. Now what you don't see here is I actually epoxy primed the underside of that the day before and let it dry so we can set this back on and I can get it welded on the front pillars. But corrosion protection is absolute necessity. So now that it's back on there, I'll get it all clamped in where it needs to be, positioned properly. Make sure the doors open and close and there's a sufficient gap between them again, and we'll start getting some things tacked in here. I have two upright braces that I had previously put on there to hold this front portion of the roof in place, and I'm going to put it exactly back where it was before and re-tack weld it on back there so we know that everything fits as it did before we cut the roof off. I'll do a little grinding here to make sure everything's clean to start tack welding it all in after it's clamped. I don't know if you can notice, but while the roof panel was off and on the fabrication table, I welded solid the complete roof where the new center section that we had made up and put in there. I welded it all solid and hammer dollied that straight and got it partially dressed up. I'll finish it once I get all the roof done, the front and rear panel. So I wasn't completely happy the way I had that tacked in the position of it, so I cut it back off, and we're going to re-tack it on here again. Do it so it's right. Now I'm putting in the center brace, the front center brace. I'm drilling and clecoing that in place now, and this will help once I adjoin the rear section of that roof on there to butt weld it. That'll help hold that completely level and real flush with the front of the roof panel. If you're not familiar with clecos, they were first invented and used in the airplane industry to hold panels in place until they got riveted. They were just a quick fastener that would go in and out, and when they got to that particular hole, they pulled the cleco out and hammer bucked in the rivet into that spot. A good way for production in the airplane industry, but obviously over the years, fabricators, coach builders, and hot rodders all have come to use these a lot, and they're very valuable, or should I say useful. Here Scott's back in working on the dash, filling in all the pieces from widening it and making it look like a dash once more. So as Scott continues working on the dash and getting everything tacked in there, I'm taking a plasma cutter and I'm going to cut the remaining amount of firewall out so I can start making a new pattern for a new one to set in place of that. Now I've taken a piece of chipboard and made a pattern up from half of the side of the firewall, just a hair over half. And what I'll do, once I have that simulated to what I need, I'll copy the other side off of that. I'll just trace it to make a full cardboard pattern. And while I'm working on patterning the firewall, Scott's inside working on the dash, and it's starting to look really, really good. So I got my firewall blank cut out, and I'm going to start fitting it in now. Obviously, it'll need a little trimming as we go. The bead rolling will also help shrink it up a little bit and make it fit better, but the way everything is shaped, it's a little tough at first getting it in there, but we get it to fit real nice eventually. Now the initial fit was so-so, which I expected because I left it a little bit oversized and trim as needed. And it takes several times fit to get it the way we want it. And there's so much going on in this. It looks like a simple panel, but there's different angles and bends and radiuses on there that we have to compensate for. So once I have the firewall panel fitting the way I like, I start bead rolling the client's company logo into the center of it. Now this will be actually featured throughout the vehicle in several areas probably. At least that's my thought. But bead rolling strengthens the panels up. Now this is just the centerpiece, but I'll do the two outer edges as well. And up above that, because that's actually going to get slotted and it'll be recessed to fit the engine a little better. So there's clearance, proper clearance behind that engine. So here's a shot of the Keystone logo that they use for their company. Looks good. So while I'm finishing up the bead roll designs in the Firewall, Scott has closed in the ends of the dash into the roll cage. And again, this is a hidden roll cage, so it's imperative that we make it disappear. So here's a shot of the Firewall with all the bead rolling done in it. Now I've sliced it to recess it back for fitment of the engine and welded it. Now it's time to set it back in, make any final adjustments, and cleco it into place. Once I have all the holes drilled in the clecos, I will take the Firewall back out. We're going to take the power plant out of this so I can get in there to work a little easier. The engine and transmission came out surprisingly easy. Now what you don't see, but you will once we pull the engine out, there's tubing there that we put in for the tunnel, the Firewall, and it runs back parallel for the complete drive shaft tunnel. Now I'm opening up the arches in these fender aprons for the turning radius for the tires, and to assure we have plenty of room obviously for that. But I'm also trimming for the edge of the Firewall that extends forward. Now if you take notice, there's 4 or 5 clecos on the right hand side of the Firewall. That's the extension that moves forward. It sets forward and fills that apron in. As I continue to work on the Firewall, Scott's working on the tubing for the structure in the flooring and the drive shaft tunnel that runs front to rear. Well, I think it's starting to look like a little something again. Now if you have a look here at the inside of the door, Scott has continued to enclose that tube on the left side, the driver's side, down to completely enclose that so it's not noticeable. The rest of the kick panel will go on there, and he's going to repeat the process on the passenger side as well. So here's a shot of the tubing for the structure for the floor and the drive shaft tunnel that runs completely through the vehicle to the back. Well, this is going to wrap up episode 8. On the next one, we'll continue the front and the floor panels that we install. Have a good one, folks.